the positions of authority that he held formerly before he was exiled, but he kind of has a plan. He knows he's lost his place. We get confirmation that he was in fact a member of the Igwugwu, right? We weren't really sure necessarily before, but now we are. So he's lost his place on that. He lost the chance to lead his warlike clan against the new religion. He lost the years in which he might have taken the highest titles. But some of the losses were not irreparable. That's a word that you will want to know, irreparable. Okay, what does that mean? Not repairable. We're using prefixes and root words. Not repairable, not fixable. So he knows that it's a double negative, so fixable. Okay. He's determined to return. He was determined that his return should be marked by his people. He would return with a flourish. Okay, flourish we want to know. And regain the 7 wasted years. And something that's interesting that Coach Comp the Reader kind of noted was, even in his first year in exile, he had begun to plan for his return. So, Uchendu's speech and this whole, mother is supreme, you think you're the greatest sufferer in the world, like this is actually a man's duty, this is what you should be doing with your time in exile, that came when he first got there, right? So, if I'm making an inference, something that's not in here, but something that I assume that Okonkwo took none of that advice. He took none of it seriously because in his first year of exile, he was planning his return to Umuofia. He's not worried about what he can, how being in his motherland could be advantageous to him, how he could benefit from it, but he's focusing on getting back to Umuofia, okay, instead. So, that's an inference that I could make. And his plan, he's going to rebuild his compound, but it's going to be bigger and better than ever. He's going to build a bigger barn than he had before. He's going to build new houses for his 2 new wives. He's going to show his wealth by introducing his sons into this prestigious element of society. And it says he saw clearly, which is ironic because he's probably not really seeing things clearly. He saw clearly the high esteem in which he would be held, and he saw himself taking the highest title in the land. So there's no room for interpretation up there, right? He sees it clearly. He knows, okay, the high esteem in which he would be held. There's no room in his mind for there to be anything else. But what his pride and his hopes and his dreams here are not leaving space for him to consider how Umuofia has changed based on the arrival of the missionaries, because they got to Umuofia first, right? And then they traveled to Mabanta after, where he was. So things probably are not the same. That's not in his mind at all there, okay? So there's 2 statements that are in the Coach Comp the Reader finds interesting in what we'll look at today, and they're both worded the same. They're talking about making amends, okay? If I'm making amends with somebody, what am I doing? Yeah, fixing things, fixing a problem, right? If me and my best friend get in a fight and then we both text each other and we're like, oh, I'm sorry, I acknowledge what I did, she acknowledges what she did, we made amends, right? We made up. So Okonkwo words both of these statements the same. He says that he thinks that his chi might now be making amends for the past disaster. So in that statement, not really leaving room for Okonkwo himself to be doing any of the making amends. Maybe he's not, I don't know, is he responsible for making amends? If you make amends, you usually have to be accountable for your behavior kind of thing. But his chi is the one that's doing the work, not him. So there will be another statement that he makes that's very similar that we'll talk about. But then he thinks about Nwoyi and Nwoyi leaving his family. And you can make inferences about, did Okonkwo learn anything based on the fact that Nwoyi left and converted? He lost a family member. Does he believe that he played a part in that at all? I don't know. He doesn't really talk about that. He says the tragedy of his first son had occurred. He thought it was going to break his spirit, but he has a resilient spirit, and he overcame his sorrow. He was able to get over it. okay? And he wants to make sure that none of his other sons will end up the way that Nui was, and he, gives them a warning. He says, "You've all seen the great abomination of your brother. Now he is no longer my son or your brother." So he's been cut off from our family. "I will only have a son who is a man, who will hold his head up among my people. If any one of you prefers to be a woman, let him follow Nui now while I am alive, so that I can curse him." Coach Cobb, the reader, doesn't think that Okonkwo believes that he played a part in that at all. It was all Nui. Okonkwo gave it his best effort, and that it has nothing to do with the dynamic in his household or anything like that. So, again, refusing to change and evolve, resistance to the transformation of the society. So, we could spend time unpacking Okonkwo and Ezenma's relationship. There's not a lot. There's maybe one quiz question about Ezenma. It's nothing incredibly difficult or anything that really has to do with this. So, all in all, Ezenma grows up. She's beautiful like her mother. She has lots of people that want to marry her in the motherland, but Okonkwo's like, "No, I don't want you to marry someone from here. I want you to wait till we get to Umofia." She says, "Of course." Okay? The one thing about this that I do want to point out is the way that Okonkwo thinks about this here down at the bottom of the page. He still wishes that she were a boy. Okonkwo thought within himself, she understood things so perfectly. Who else among his children could have read his thoughts so well? With two beautiful grown-up daughters, his return to Umofia would attract considerable attention. Okay, so having these two daughters would be beneficial to Okonkwo in this big grandiose return, and help reintegrate him into Umofian society, right? His future sons-in-laws would be men of authority in the clan, and the poor and unknown would not dare to come forth. So, I don't know. What do you have to offer for me? Kind of thing, I guess. So, there's that. So, he has this big plan. Okay? Surely nothing can go wrong. And then we learn about everything that's changed in Umofia since Okonkwo has been gone. Not only, in Umofia, if we're calling it what it is, the process of colonization, okay? Let's say when we're saying it in past tense, that means it's completed, right? You've been colonized. It's done. We're in part 3, we're watching the progression of the colonization taking place. Okay, so initially in the beginning stages, the church is really trying to target the outcasted members of Igbo society, right? Because they don't really serve a purpose in their own culture and society. They've done something that's been labeled them as an outcast. So they're looking for purpose. So those are the first people that start to convert. Okay, shifts in social hierarchy, shifts the power dynamic. But now, as the process of colonization has progressed, men of authority are now converting. So it's not just people that were on the bottom of the social ladder, but it's people that held titles and power and influence within Umofia, okay, which is more significant. And first they're going to bring the church, but now, as they're progressing through this, they have brought government as well. You have a new character. You have the district commissioner. He's like the judge and the jury, the sheriff, okay? And they have a place, a physical space, okay, a courthouse that also kind of doubles as a prison, right? It says, apart from the church, the white men had also brought government. They had built a court where the district commissioner judged cases in ignorance, okay? If you're saying that someone's being ignorant, what does that mean?
They're being not so smart.
Okay, let's evolve that a little bit.
Blind to what's in front of them.
Okay, blind to what's in front of let's take the base of that word. You're right. So if you're taking a reading quiz and you see the word ignorant or ignorance and you're like, I don't really know what that means, right? Well, the root of that is to ignore, right? So you're ignoring something, you're missing a piece, Okay? And what that means here is that the district commissioner judged cases in ignorance. He's ignoring all of the systems for law and order and the customs and practices of these people, how they conduct themselves to maintain order. He's ignoring those and adopting his own, bringing his own. Okay?
Yeah, so would it be the same as negligence?
Maybe like neglecting to acknowledge something. Yeah.
But if it's been, if it's happening purposely, then it would be.
I think you could argue both. You could structure them synonymously here. Okay. So the other thing that's adding another layer here are these court messengers. And the court messengers are kind of like the enforcers, right? You have one district commissioner, and then the rest of the people are acting on his behalf, the court messengers. And what's really important to know and remember throughout what happens in Part 3 is that, to be frank, there's maybe 4 white people total here, right? All of the court messengers and the people that are doing the enforcing and the interpreters and everything, all of those people that now hold those positions of authority in this new society are former members of the African tribal system. They're now working on behalf of the missionaries. Okay? So they understand the Igbo language, and they've been taught to be literate in English, to read and write in English. So they understand both sides and both aspects of it here. Okay? So it's not like there's this strange person that they've seen that is enforcing everything. Okay? It's people that look like them, that used to be them, used to be their neighbors, used to be their distant cousin in one of the other 9 villages. That is who now is working for the missionaries and enforcing these new systems and laws and societies. Okay? So the court messengers, most of them are from Amuru. Okay? Remember when I showed you the map at the beginning of Things Fall Apart, and we looked at Lagos and the trading port? Amuru is right there. So right when the missionaries landed on the continent of Africa, those are the first people they encountered. So they've been a part of the colonization process for a long time. Okay? They're arrogant, they're high-handed, they guard the prison, they're abusive, they're violent, they beat people in the prison, they make them work every morning, and you can really contrast this new government system with the one that was in place before, okay, that tried to bring people back together, that made you pay a fine and be accountable, but it wasn't violent, you weren't being imprisoned, it wasn't they weren't hanging people or there was no guillotine or anything like that, right? They're trying to reinforce the social bonds within their culture, but this is an incredible contrast from that, okay? And you see that Okonkwo still can't understand this. He's like, why have we let this happen? Are we just a bunch of, wimps, a bunch of cowards? Why didn't we rise up and bring our machetes and go and, ride our horses into town and, take care of business? Okay? He can't understand why things have ended up the way that they have. And these 2 paragraphs from Obi Erica are really important because he explains how this has come to be and why this has happened and why the Klansmen that are remaining can't really rise up and why it's not logical for them to just get everybody together and take their machetes and go and kill all the people that have converted and we'll be fine, right? He's trying to explain that to Okonkwo. He says, Okonkwo's like, we must fight these men and drive them from the land. Obiarka's like, what do you not understand about this? We can't do that. It's already too late. Our own men and sons have joined the ranks of the stranger. They have joined his religion, and they help to uphold his government. If we should try to drive out the white men in Umofia, we should find it easy, right? Because there's like 2 of them at a time. There are only 2 of them. But what if our own people who are following their way have been given power? They would go to Imuru and bring the soldiers, and we would be like Abame. Sure, like we can kill these like 2 white guys that are here, but then the court messengers and everybody that works for them are going to go and get all of the other troops from Imuru, and they're going to come and, destroy us all, like they did the men of Abame. He paused for a long time, and their friend was hanged because the court said, we're going to take your land, we're going to divide it, and he didn't want that to happen. And Okonkwo still doesn't seem to get it. He's like, does the white man understand our custom about land? And Obiarka's like, I mean, they don't really care to understand and follow that. They're here with a mission and they're here with a goal. Like, what are you not getting about that? They can take time to understand, and they might actually understand, but that doesn't fit into their plan, their goal, which is why they're here. And language is also a barrier as well. Obiarka says, how can he when he does not even speak our tongue? But he says our customs are bad, and our own brothers who have taken up his religion also say that our customs are bad. How do you think we can fight when our own brothers have turned against us? The white man was very clever. He came quietly and peaceably with his religion. We were amused at his foolishness and allowed him to stay. Now he has won our brothers, and our clan can no longer act like one. He has put a knife on the things that held us together, and we have fallen apart. I wrote up next to that, the center cannot hold. Remember the poem that we read at the beginning, right before we started reading, right? The center cannot hold, things fall apart. Okay? So, what Obiarka is saying is, I mean, if we go into war, we're killing our cousins, our brothers, our neighbors, our, elders, whoever that is. We're killing our own people, and their number is beginning to outnumber us. We can't speak the same language. We can't make the people in charge understand, so what are we supposed to do? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so if they actually wanted to talk to them and sort it out without actually going to war, since their people had joined the other people, like the Englishman, their people speak their language, so maybe they could communicate via them.
Well, they can interpret. We'll talk about that when we talk about Mr. Brown and the conversation that he has, to learn more. I think it's in the next chapter, to learn more about their religion, and I'll expand on that in just a minute, okay? I'll use that as an example. That's a good point, okay? So, I mean, Okonkwo is still going through life why has this happened? You're a bunch of girls, right? You're a bunch of cowards. Get your machete and let's go, okay? Obiarka's I don't really know what to do, man. I can't really explain it to you any other way, okay? So, Okonkwo is just stuck, okay? Stuck in his ways. Alright, we'll talk about chapter 21 and then we'll take a break, okay? Because I know it's a lot. So, we learned some more stuff about what's happened in Umofia. The process of colonization has brought some sort of economic prosperity to them, right? And that's a part of colonization, right? They're now making money. There's a money stream from crops that are already there, right? Palm oil and kernel. Those are things that they already had, but now there's a trading post and all that kind of stuff. So it is helping them to be more, well off in that way. But you have another character, you have Mr. Brown. And Mr. Brown's the head of the religious part of it, okay? And he's not super pushy. He's not fire and brimstone. This is my way or the highway. You're going to do what I say. He seems to be pretty open and easygoing. He's very calm, and he doesn't want conflict. He wants to keep the peace, okay? He still has a mission, he still has a goal, but he's not obnoxious about it, you could say. So, you have Mr. Brown, and he's talking to one of the Umofians, Acuna, and they have this long conversation, serving to show that Mr. Brown is open to hearing kind of about Igbo spirituality, and they have a conversation about their religion, and he's willing to listen, right? But you really wonder, like, is he doing this because he's interested, because he wants to learn more, because he wants to coexist? Well, I mean, he might be nice, but he has a goal and he has a purpose, right? And you can see that here. It says, in this way, Mr. Brown learned a great deal about the religion of the clan, but ultimately he came to the conclusion that a frontal attack on it would not succeed. So he does learn about it, but he learns about it to then formulate how he's going to meet his goal. How am I going to help colonize these people, right, from a religious standpoint, okay? So he can't be aggressive about it. So he says, I'm going to do some other things instead. He builds a school, he builds a little hospital, and he starts begging people to come to my school. Please come to my school, I'll teach you how to read and write in English. Okay? And that works, okay? So he's like not going out into the village every day in the market and trying to preach and prophesize about your religion is wrong because of this religion is right because of this. He doesn't think that's going to work. So his strategy is to pair religion and education together, okay? He begged and argued and prophesied. He said that leaders of the land in the future would be men and women who learned to read and write. If Umofia failed to send her children to the school, strangers would come from other places to rule them. Okay? You remember at the very beginning when I showed you that map and I showed you how the continent of Africa was divided up at the Berlin Conference between all the European powers, right? The Dutch, the Portuguese, the French, the Spanish, the British. That's kind of what he's referring to, right? If you don't go to school and, look, I'm Mr. Brown, I'm cool, right? If you don't let me help you and go to my school and let me teach you how to read and write in English, then some other random people from some other place are going to come here and then they're going to try this all over again, okay? So that's kind of his strategy. And it starts to work, right? More people come to his school. He gives them gifts, okay? And it's not just young people. It's, you know, adults. They go work in their farms in the morning and then they go to school in the afternoon. People began to say that the white man's medicine was quick in working. Mr. Brown's school produced quick results. So the final layer to that is you go to school, you learn to read and write in English, you get a job. You get a new job, like a court messenger, okay? Or you get to go work in the vineyard, or you get to be a clerk, right? And you have a new kind of power that you might not have ever been able to have in your old, you know, society and belief system.
Yeah, is it just for the keywords or for everybody?
Yeah, like you're going to convert to Christianity, and then I'm going to teach you to read and write in English. So, not only do you have disruption of social aspects, but you have this new society that's forming where status and power and what defines those. Formerly, you had titles, you were strong, you were a great warrior, you had all these wives, whatever, right? That's how you get a position of authority. Now, literacy and education are the new standard for having some sort of like clout, right, in this new society that's forming, okay? Everything happens really fast in part 3. Like, Mr. Brown gets sick and he has to leave, so he's just gone, okay? But it does flash back to when Okonkwo returns to Umofia. And Mr. Brown has heard about him, and he's like, oh, this guy, you know, like, he used to be, you know, like a major power player here formerly. I need to go talk to him. I'm going to go talk to him about Nwoyi. Surely he's going to love that. That'll be a great bridge of conversation. Wow. So Mr. Brown does go see Okonkwo when he gets back, and he says he had just sent Okonkwo's son, Nwoyi, who is now called Isaac, so Nwoyi has changed his name, to the new training college for teachers in Imuru. And Okonkwo was like, I don't care, get out of my house. Okay? And what's ironic here when you think about it is Nwoyi could never, like, live up to Okonkwo's standards, and Okonkwo never thought that he would have any sort of power or influence in his village, right? He wasn't a good wrestler, he wasn't very strong, like, he wasn't really interested in all these kind of things. But the ironic thing now is that as this society is transforming, Nwoyi is the one that probably has the most power in this new society, right? Because not only can he read and write in English, but he is going to be a teacher, and he's being sent to a training college. So, I mean, talk about the extent of his education. More education equals more power here. So, it's a little bit ironic. Okay? And, of course, Okonkwo was bummed. He's like, nobody had a sign waiting for me when I got back to Umofia. There was no parade. There was no confetti. There was nothing. People didn't even notice that I came back, right? Umofia did not appear to have taken any special notice of the warrior's return. The clan had undergone such profound change during his exile that it was barely recognizable. Okay? There were still many who saw these new institutions as evil, but even they talked and thought about little else, and certainly not Okonkwo's return. Okonkwo was deeply grieved, and it was not just personal grief. He mourned for the clan, which he saw breaking up and falling apart, and he mourned for the warlike men of Umofia who had so unaccountably become soft like women. Okay? So Okonkwo says, my return was not grand and it was not great because these people don't seem to view power in the same way anymore. They don't respect a strong warrior or, you know, power and strength like they used to. In which he does say that they're unaccountable for. Like, they're not accountable to our traditions. Like, who do they think they are, kind of thing. Like, do they not realize what they're doing in destroying our culture? Okay? So, Okonkwo is descending emotionally. Alright? Okay, we're going to take like a 5-minute break. Go to the bathroom, stand up, talk, wake up a little bit.